Great. Well, I think we can probably get started now. So thank you everybody for coming along this afternoon. Welcome to this session on short film and festival strategies with Kathleen McInnis. So just a few words before I'll let them get started. So this event is brought to you by Short Circuit, which is a new talent development initiative for Scotland, delivered by Film City Futures in partnership with Glasgow Film, supported by Screen Scotland and BFI Network, using funds from the National Lottery. Just so you're all aware, this session will be recorded and then uploaded to our pages, Glasgow Film and Short Circuit pages afterwards. So if you miss any of it at any point, you can catch up again then. So this session will be hosted by the lovely Sanne Jehoul, who is the co-director of the Glasgow Short Film Festival. So thank you so much for agreeing to take part in this as well. We are joined today by Kathleen McInnis, who is a strategic publicist, creative producer, film programmer, and curator extraordinaire. You seem to have worked absolutely everywhere, from Palm Springs Short Fest, Aspen Short Fest, TIFF Shortcuts, Tribeca, Seattle. Is there anywhere else that I've missed it?
Doesn't it make you wonder why I can't keep a job? You're like, God, look at all those places. No, I'm teasing.
But so you have a wealth of experience in this area. So we really encourage people to submit your questions, or you can chat in the chat box as well. Also afterwards, just as we're funded from the BFI, they're always looking for us to kind of find out a bit about who our audiences are. So afterwards, we'll send around a survey. So if you'd be able to complete that, that would be really fantastic. So yeah, I think with that, I'll let you take it away from here, Sanne.
Thank you. Thank you for having me as well. And really nice to be able to speak to Kathleen today. So yeah, as Emma was saying, you can put all your questions in the Q&A box. Kathleen's first going to start with a sort of general chat. And if you have any questions at all, just like feed it through as we go on, and I will try and pick up on it as soon as I can. Kathleen, so you've got your presentation ready, and then I'll just follow up and jump in where I can.
Please,
Cool.
Please do. So I would first like to say thank you, because this is an amazing opportunity, and it's fabulous to pretend that I'm in Scotland for a minute. I love Scotland, so it's fabulous just to pretend. And also, I love having the ability to be able to try to direct this specifically towards the best interests of everybody attending. So Sanne, anytime you want to jump in, please do. Please just cut me off. It's not hard. It might take half a second, but it's not hard. And I'm happy to have an engagement there. And then mostly, as I was thinking about what could possibly be the best angle to take on this conversation, because I do a lot of these talks because I focus on emerging world cinema filmmakers. Emerging meaning shorts, first and second features. And that's in narrative, documentary, or animation, it doesn't matter. And world cinema meaning everybody outside of the United States. I really like working with everybody outside of my own country. I was trying to think, okay, what could be the best angle to take? And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be best to start with, who are we and what are we to do right now in this year of COVID that seems to have upended everybody's strategic thinking about what they should do with festivals and how they should look at them, and how that even can be possibly appropriate or advantageous to a filmmaker's work. So if it's okay, I thought I would start there.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do is, it's so weird because I can't see the crowd, which I usually can. And so poor Sanne's got me laser focused on her. So she's like, wait, are you talking to me? Me? I'm so okay. So I apologize if it seems a little intense. But you guys in the crowd, in the audience, one of the things that I do is I try to help focus filmmakers to merge their creative and business development together using their films on the festival circuit. Like, this is a big deal for me, because when I first started, the barrier to entry seemed enormous and stupid. So enormous and stupid together was a bad combination, and it took a really long time for me to really understand there actually is no barrier to entry, but there's a perception that is really well fed by the people on the other side. And so I wanted to try to demystify and bring some clarity to how you can use your film work to help move yourself through this opening door of an industry that you want to be embedded in a way that works to your advantage. So whatever decisions you make in the future for what other films you want to make or any other jobs you want to do in the film industry, at least you're doing so with a good background of education about what you're sort of looking at. And the reason that this works from this, American talking to you, the reason that this works for world cinema is that pretty much the industry is kind of the same worldwide. It's really rather surprising, but the format of the industry doesn't really change very much country to country. So this is something that can be applied to everybody anywhere when they look at that door they think they're trying to get through. In reality, there is no door. So just a little heads up, that's the giveaway at the end of the talk. There is no door. So I'd like to start out with something I call the cinematic trinity, just to set us all from the same base. So this is the cinematic trinity. My left hand is you, the filmmaker as artist. My right hand is everybody. We call them audience. It's anybody who's going to consume your content. So it could be programmers, journalists, producers, financiers, agents, managers, blah, 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 blah. But in this hand specifically, it's ticket buyers as well. So ticket buyers live here. They're my thumb. And in the middle, because I don't have a third hand, I have my head in the middle, right there, where my nose is, right about my nose. This is industry as conduit. So this is everybody who also is here, but not ticket buyers. There's no thumb on my nose. So who are industry as conduit? These might also be programmers, journalists, financiers, sales agents, reps, blah, blah, blah. But they serve a very particular function right here. They're the ones, remember this is filmmaker as artist, this is industry as conduit. These guys, these people are the one who take your language, your film language, and translate it into a marketing language. They then move your marketing language out to audience, including ticket buyers. This is the world that I live in. I live in the translation of your creative. I know it looks kind of silly, doesn't it? But I do live right here. I honestly do. Somebody's going to take a picture of this. It's going to be all over the internet tomorrow, and I'm going to look goofy as shit.
I'm screenshotting as we speak.
I knew it. Okay, this. Oh my God, that cracks me up. This, by the way, I do swear. So if anybody's offended, you should turn off your mic right now. This is where I live. I live between your creative language, which is how you made the movie, and this marketing language. And what I want to do with all of my filmmakers, I want to help them translate or understand how to translate their creative language into a marketing language that actually serves not just the film that's going to audiences and ticket buyers, but the filmmaker. Because we're using the film festival circuit as a launching pad, not just for your film, but also for you, your career, your networking, your next project, and maybe the next project after that. So this space is my sweet spot. And in this space, we talk a lot about film language. Let me just define what that means. It is the language with which you sell your film, okay? So that's synopsis, director's statement, producer's statement, poster image, stills, your iconic image from your film. These things have great meaning, and almost 100% filmmakers are taught not to think about them. And I want to break that habit, because this is where you, the filmmaker, find your greatest authority over your own voice. This is where you can create the brand of who you are and the brand of your films. Now remember, all these things are not static. They are not written in cement. The cinematic trinity is very fluid. It's very organic. You could be 1, 2, 3 things at any time. The branding, as I call it, somehow that became a bad word, but the branding is not something that you've written in stone and it has to stay with you forever. It's a shorthand. It's a shorthand the same way this language is a shorthand to get your voice, your authentic voice, out of you and to the people who are going to consume it in a way where there is no opportunity for them to muck it up. I know it sounds very Machiavellian, and it is a little bit, but this is the world I live in, to try to help you, the filmmakers, have better results from your experience on the festival circuit. Okay, so you guys, I think for the most part, tell me if this is right, some of they're all emerging filmmakers, like in the process of maybe first or second shorts, maybe a few first features.
Yeah, that's what we're sort of aiming at. I think particularly short filmmakers. There might be some people in who have a feature coming.
Okay, super, super. So the short filmmaker who's using a short to present themselves onto the festival circuit, which means to the industry, has a unique position. So first of all, you have a lot of competition. Let's be straight up. There's a lot of people making short films. And there's an audience for every short film. The question is it an audience of 2, like your mom and dad, or is it an audience of 2 million? Remember, on everything we talk about today, everything you're doing in your career, it's all about journey to audience, right? That's why we do this. That's why Sanne has the Glasgow Short Film Festival. That's why we have cinemas and places where audience can interact with filmmaker. You're starting to build a fan base effectively. And that fan base is going to be able to follow you and support you and champion you and help bring you through some difficult times, most likely. And so in this journey to audience, we have to say, okay, this is a lot of pressure, I know, on filmmakers, but not only do you have to make a brilliant short film, so no pressure, you also have to pay attention to who your audience is. You've heard that before, I know you have. Who your audience is. Here's where we diverge in this moment from traditional thinking. I don't care who your demographic is. I believe you're all global storytellers. So I believe your audience is a global audience. And I don't believe that they are divided by gender or by age or by income. I believe if you can speak to the human condition in your storytelling, you can access this. Apparently, this is the global audience right here. I just made that up, so who knew? But if you can access the human condition in your storytelling, filmmaker as artist, you can drive directly to anybody with regards to your short film. Okay, human condition. What does this really mean? How do we really break that down? So filmmakers often say to them, I do this thing called cinema therapy. And also, you guys, I just realized how fast I'm talking because it's morning here and I'm a little adrenaline rushed. So somebody just ping out or shout out or beg for mercy and tell me to slow down if it's too fast, okay? So human condition. Here's how I define it. Somebody in the middle of nowhere who has no experience with your film, subject or story, who's never maybe even been to a film, who doesn't, actually maybe has never even been told a story. They live in the middle of nowhere, set deep in the middle of somewhere else. They are isolated, they are of any age, they are of any gender, and they get the opportunity to see your film. What is it about your film that is going to speak to them no matter what the story is? That's the human condition. So often filmmakers will say to me, I'll say, what's your film about? And they'll say, it's about 2 girls who go on a road trip. One of them has a gun, the other one doesn't know it. They start the trip and then they stop at this place sort of in the middle of nowhere. Again, it's my favorite place. And I stop them right there. I'm like, nope. What's the film about? What's the film about? What are the themes? What's the human condition you're addressing? Are you talking about, let's say, is it the feeling of other? That comes up a lot. That's a big theme in filmmaking. The feeling of one of the basic emotions that we all have no matter who we are. Love, maybe hate, although those are awfully close. Heartfulness. Are we talking about, for example, sometimes people are like telling stories that really reflect this idea of where do we belong? Who are we? Is there a face that we have to put on? Do we have to become somebody else in order to get through life? So these are themes that no matter who you are, you can kind of address. So even if you've never been the other, you probably remember somebody back in school who was treated differently because they looked differently or acted differently. They were the other. But I'm also guessing you at some time have been the other. Let's say you're in a family scenario with siblings and you're the one who never gets the dessert you want. For a brief second, that's being the other. So all of these things kind of come together when we're talking about the greater theme and looking at the human condition. Okay, so great, they say, Kathleen, great. We got the human condition down. How do we find this again in our story? How do we look at this? So I'm going to take you on an airplane ride right now. And honestly, if we were not in context, you guys, can you imagine somebody trying to listen to this story, like without knowing what we're talking about? Holy moly.
I mean,
All
in
right.
COVID times, you know.
Exactly. I'm taking you on an airplane journey. Let's have you cross the Atlantic, or look, you can pick your ocean wherever you want to go. Usually when you fly over an ocean or internationally long distances, you're flying roughly about 37,000 feet. I'm going to take you to 50,000 feet. I want you to be on that airplane at 50,000 feet, and I want you to look out the windows, and I want you to notice what you can see. And since I can't see you and call on you, I'm going to sort of rather arrogantly tell you what you're going to see. You're going to see sky. You're going to see clouds, maybe. You're going to see the curvature of the earth, perhaps. You're going to see the oceans. You're going to see some land masses. You're probably, maybe you think you see a mountain, but you're not really sure. But that's about it. That's the big place we start at 50,000 feet when we're trying to establish your story and your human condition. By the way, what you say, does this have to do with festival strategy? It's the very next thing we're going to talk about. So at the 50,000 foot level, and you look at, and these are the things you can see, we kind of get the broad strokes, right? Now that pilot really wants to land. That pilot is super anxious to land, and he starts doing this. For some reason, he's always a he in my stories, by the way. That's not sexist. I'm not sure what that is. But he starts to land the plane right around 35,000 feet now, and you guys can understand this if you've been at that level on a plane. You start to see things that make more sense. You might see rivers. You definitely see mountains. You might get a sense of a large highway somewhere, depending on how big it is. You can maybe see some cities off in the distance. And as you come down 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, you get closer and closer and closer into your story, because we're landing in your story. So by the time we get to the runway and we're about to hit the tarmac, you can see everything. Maybe not immediately up close, but you can see the cars, you can see the people, you can see the buildings. That's the trajectory of how we move through your story. There's a reason for this. To come back up to talk about the kind of film you made, to talk about how much of your voice, filmmaker as artist, was in that story, and to talk about how we put that into language, industry as conduit, that can lead you to festivals, programmers, audience, where you can have the best opportunity to achieve the goals and expectations you've set for yourself, for your film, and probably for your next film or two. The reason all this makes sense to me in my head, and hopefully I've explained it kind of well enough, is that festivals are the place where your voice is heard the loudest. And the people who are looking for that voice are specifically looking, not because they are looking for this short film you already have on the circuit, but because they're looking for your next film. They're looking to see what your voice is. They're looking to see, do they want to work with you? Do they like your style? Do they think you bring something that they haven't seen before? I'm going to use a dreaded word. They're looking for something fresh. Oh my God, I want a t-shirt that has a big slash through the word fresh. It doesn't mean crap, you guys. It doesn't mean anything. What they're trying to say is, I'm so arrogant, I'm actually telling the entire film industry what they really want to say, but I know I'm right on this one. What they really are trying to say is, how much of your voice did you get out of yourself and up onto screen? How much did you take from your gut, which is the intuitive, instinctual, through your heart, which is the emotional, out your head, which is where the craft has been building, and put through script onto screen? That's a big journey. And the way you can tell that you've hit all those markers along the way is if it that thought of what you want to do kind of makes you throw up a little. That's your gut. That means you hit an instinctual place that doesn't feel good, which means that's the right place. Your heart, which means you have a deep attachment in some way to the larger themes, the 50,000 foot level themes in your story. That gives it emotional veracity. Through your head, that's everything you learned in school, how to turn on the camera, how to work with a team, how to, that's here. Onto script, it's got to get on that paper, because that's the blueprint where everything is going to happen. And then from that to screen. And that's a tough jump too. We can talk more about that later if we have time. So in this process, you are developing, deciding, creating, committing to a voice. That voice is exactly what the people over an audience, not ticket buyers yet, but the people over an audience are looking at you. Wow, that's kind of intense, by the way. Looking at you to judge you by. So I'm going to put Sanne on the hot seat right now. She's a program. Right. She's a director of a film festival that looks at thousands of shorts, right? Thousands of shorts. Yeah. Guys, roughly around the world right now, major short film festivals are getting 5,000 shorts a year, at least. Some are getting 6,500. Sundance always gets its 10,000. That's a unique anomaly, but there are thousands of shorts that come in. And she's looking at, she's not a ticket buyer yet, but she's looking at your work, kind of like doing the voodoo stare at your work. And she's making assessments and judgments, not on you necessarily, but on who you are through your art, through your storytelling. So if she broke it down, I would hazard a guess that she's looking at things like, how did you handle story? How did you handle character? How did you handle casting? Did you cast up so the story was elevated, or did you cast too far up and the story got overwhelmed? How did you handle mise-en-scene? How did you handle teamwork? Can we clearly see really strong cinematography, really strong art direction, really strong work with your actors? All of these things build. They do it almost instantaneously because she's good at what she does. This comes in sort of more holistically than bit by bit, although at the end of the day, she may write notes like production values overwhelmed story, or adding that actor overwhelmed the entire film, or this was a proof of concept. For God's sake, you guys don't make a proof of concept, but she might say this is only a proof of concept. So there's lots of things that will come out of her evaluation, but that's what she's doing. That's what everybody's doing. They're evaluating the presentation of your voice through your work. You have goals and expectations for your film and for yourself. What I want to do is I want to marry those goals and expectations with the work you have. I want to give this audience, not yet ticket buyers, but this audience, a shortcut to understanding that by way of your language. And I want to help you identify those elements so that you can pay attention to them when you're crafting your work. And then we want to make sure that that branding, hello, industry as conduit, that branding stays intact because of the language we gave them when they move to audience. And now it includes ticket buyers. Because every time we do this journey, we're proving journey to audience and we're expanding journey to audience. And that is the proof in the pudding, as it were, to industry, that you have a voice that has legs, that you know how to speak to a global audience, which is box office, and that you understand who you are and why you are uniquely qualified to tell this story. Uniquely qualified to tell a story. What does that really boil down to? I'm not a fan of appropriation. I am a big fan of people being uniquely qualified to tell their stories. You're probably not surprised to know that I'm kind of loud and opinionated and speak quickly when I see people not paying attention to being uniquely qualified to tell that story, which translates to guys quit telling women's stories. It translates to white people quit taking on people of color stories. It speaks directly to the colonization of somebody else's story for profit by people who have been doing that for generations and centuries. No, doesn't fly with me. Does it mean that a white guy can never make a movie again? No, of course not. White guys have made great movies for a long time. Do it from the perspective that you're uniquely qualified to speak through. That's what it means. So in this process of doing all of this, and we're looking at the festivals ahead of us, it turns the traditional festival strategy on its head. So instead of saying, what are the film festivals I should be sending my film to? Because that list is useless. Oh, you should send your film to XYZ and ABC. Those are great festivals. Well, really, why are they great? And why are they great for this film? And why are they great for your specific goals and expectations? It's a waste of time, you guys. So instead of doing that, what we do is we flip it and we say, what do you want to do? What do you want the film to do? What's the film that you have? What's the language we can use to help make sure it arrives in its best possible state to address the goals and expectations? And then where can those goals and expectations be met at a festival? Before the COVID the COVID, like I've now given it a title. Before the COVID, we had roughly 5,000 film festivals around the world. Clearly not all of them created equal. In the middle of COVID now, there really are three key elements that you want to look at for a festival. It's very pared down to see if a festival can help you in your progress. It's very pared down right now. The three things are the laurels of that festival so vital and so important that just by having them, it elevates you and your story by putting it on your poster. So that's the short list of those big, dinosaur festivals, as I like to call them. Cannes, let's start there. Berlin, Venice. I love Berlin, but we have to include it in there. Venice, there's a short list right there. The second thing is are you in a juried competition? Juried is the key word here. Juried because juried competitions are still vital as a possible pathway towards the award season campaigning route. And because you can still jury via Zoom without any problem. So the integrity is still intact. That can happen at a lot of festivals, right? You've got, if you're thinking Oscar, for example, you just take a look at that Oscar qualifying short film list, and you've got a lot of festivals there. But also juried awards from other major festivals, especially audience festivals, can be incredibly valuable. It's because what do awards do? Awards are a proof of audience, by the way. And then the third thing is that we're looking for right now is active engagement with audience. This is a little tricky. A lot of festivals want to do pre-recorded Q&As, but that doesn't do you, the filmmaker, as much good as an active engagement Q&A. So me talking right now is not going to be nearly as effective for you as when in a couple of minutes we turn over to talk with you and the questions that I hope you're putting into the chat or the Q&A. Come on, guys, get your game on, get some questions in there. That will be much more interesting to you because we'll be able to speak directly to what it is that affects you. It's the same for you at a film festival. If you have good social media, which is the place where you capture audience right now, a robust social media presence where you actually can draw your audience to capture them, keep them, they do become the vanguards for you and they will follow you as a value added asset. So I'm saying that for festivals during COVID, if you've got some way to offer a live engagement with a director or a couple of directors and their audience, it's much, much, much more valuable. And many festivals are now beginning to figure this out and try to see how they can do it manageably. There's a couple of good audience festivals in the States that are contemplating doing every day. They'll do 5 of their directors in conversation with live audience. Doesn't matter if you've seen the film yet or not, you'll come up on Zoom, you'll be able to engage. And in that way, you'll have a good hour, maybe a little bit more of dynamic conversation that's back and forth about, not just about exactly the film, but also about, the more thematic ideas of who you are as a filmmaker, what your philosophy is, what your artistic intent is. Those are really valuable for filmmakers. It is this journey to audience that is not only exciting and fun and good to do, it is that engagement that festivals can bring to the table that changes the game for you in terms of your creative development. And when you have captured that, see, it's a two-parter, when you've captured that audience becomes a value-added asset that then also changes the game for your business development. See how I work that in? It's amazing how it all comes together. So as I was saying earlier to the team, this is a 3-hour talk that I gave it a really big diet and tried to jam all the highlights into a 30-minute talk. But I want to make sure that I give a lot of room for questions from Sanne, questions from you guys. I see there's at least one in the Q&A. All of those things, I'd like to be able to tailor some of this more directly to you. Is that fair? Can we?
Yeah, I mean, I've just got one coming in there from Festival Formula from Katie saying, do you think this COVID crisis will flush out the more irrelevant festivals? So obviously, like she's mentioning quite a lot with the scam festivals, but then I guess it counts a bit more widely in the general, the small festival circuit. Like, what do you think that's going to do?
So that's a really good question. So let's break this out a little bit. You've got the top tier festivals, as they're called, the dinosaurs, as I call them, which are sort of the festivals that can answer all of your goals and expectations in one fell swoop if you go there. Those are called industry-facing festivals. But then you have the next tier, which are really strong audience-facing festivals, and they're super important. Because remember, you guys, the whole reason we're doing this is journey to audience. Beneath that, you have regional festivals, some of which can be really vital for that director audience engagement. So I don't want to discount any of them. Then underneath regional, you have a number of festivals that are sort of in that world of economic trade and development for a certain city or state or country. And they're really more promotional festivals. I do believe some of those are going to go away because they have their funding sources are usually tied into money that's driven by economic development and tourism, and not a lot of tourism going on during COVID, for sure. Way down the list, like I could keep going, but way down at the bottom of the list are those scam festivals, which I abhor and which I want to teach everybody how to recognize. And they are simply proliferating. You guys, I'm so sorry to say it, but it almost immediately after COVID hit and pandemic hit and we all went into lockdown, I saw a slew of press releases and announcements for those scam festivals, which have no brick and mortar base. You have to pay to apply, but you're also paying for, or to submit, but you're also paying for an award, which is a dead giveaway. They promise you access to industry, but they have no access to industry. It's like a mill. It's like there's companies that do 10, 12, 20 at a time, and they just churn them out, and they name them festivals close to other festival names. So if you're not really paying attention, they're hoping you're going to make a mistake. Those festivals are jumping in number, and we really need to like stop that in its tracks. We just need to make sure everybody understands what they are, and we don't give them money, and then they'll go away.
Yeah, because it's sort of quite strange that that's not being cracked down on by platforms more than it already,
I totally agree, and I think the problem is that the platforms also want the money, of the relationship, and until they can prove that it's a scam, some of these things are year one, and until you can prove scam, maybe they feel obligated. But I agree with you. I think that's a mistake. I think there should be better filtration from the platforms.
Yeah. Well, speaking of these platforms, I guess as well, like particularly with filmmakers, short filmmakers, first-time filmmakers that are, setting out in that world and know maybe those big hitter festivals that you're talking about, but don't know that kind of like second, if you want to call it that second tier circuit that can be so important for personal development and networking. Like, and it's really easy to just end up on Film Freeway and just submit and, and what, I guess what is a good way for filmmakers to research the profile of a festival and a festival's industry attendance, audience attendance, and how that matches their film,
It's such a good question. So first of all, read the trades. You can get free email versions of their daily briefs in your inbox, and the trades are Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Screen International, and IndieWire right now. You can add Deadline and The Wrap if you want, if you're more North American centric. Read what the trades are saying, even if you only glance through the headlines. You'll start to get a feeling for what festivals are sort of authentic and how people speak about them and which ones are getting the press. The second thing is, it's so basic, you guys, but it's something that it's not easy to think of unless somebody encourages you to. Look at what the reportage is out of each festival. Is if you've got a short and you're like, I really need press, and so I'm going to submit here because I hear a lot of press go there. Well, sure, and the festival may say to you, oh, we have 20 press people coming. Are those press people actually covering? Are they actually doing editorial? Are they only doing reviews? And does any of that apply to shorts? So you can even go back a year at the most, or 2 years maybe if you have to, and see what the reportage was that came out of that. Now, Toronto is great for shorts because they actually get coverage on shorts. And coverage from Toronto on a short can actually be useful. Is that the same for every festival? Absolutely not. The other thing too that I really encourage my filmmakers to do, think of things in 3-month chunks. We have about a 3-month lead time roughly between the deadlines for submission and when the film festival is coming. So if you can forecast ahead by about 3 months, 3 or 4 months, and you can look at the festivals coming up in that next section, and you can identify and pinpoint just those festivals that you think are perfect and that you're perfectly married to and you want to go to. then start your submission period, your submission experience there. Don't be applying to festivals 6 months away. Don't be like, I have a filmmaker right now who is like so strung out in terms of the film festival list that they've applied to. I can't do anything for you. Because once you apply, you are saying, if chosen, I'll play. Look, this is the hard lesson. This is the old lady coming out in me right now. If you look at the finger, if you apply, if you submit to a festival for consideration, and they come back and they say, yes, we would like you, and you go back and try to negotiate because you're trying to play them off another festival, bad form, bad filmmaker, because that festival has gone. I'm hot about this one. That festival has already gone through all the work of evaluating your film, of planning their program around your film, of seeing where your film was to be included. Hours of work. Sometimes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people have watched that film and have put their thoughts to it and have carefully considered where it would fit in the programming. And then you are like, well, I don't know, we might want to wait for something better. Yeah. I don't know about Glasgow, but I will tell you the festivals that I work and the programmers that I know closely, I talk about those filmmakers. I do. I don't know if anybody else does, but I do. I'm like, oh, you're not going to believe this, but here's a name for the.
Yeah. Obviously, it is, I guess, tricky if you're starting out on that, just knowing, you might want to, you want the big ones, you want a premiere at the big ones, because that's still where that premiere status also matters. And do you shoot yourself in the foot, by waiting it out as well? Like, how do you even get around that? Because how do you estimate the potential of your film when you're that early on in your career as well?
So I will tell you, never does a filmmaker correctly estimate the value of their film. I don't think it's possible. I think filmmakers know too much. Like, you knew how hard it was to get something, or what you didn't get, or the resources you didn't have. So you need somebody else to help you. So whether it's somebody like me, a publicist, a strategist, or somebody outside the realm of your immediate film, but in the business, who actually understands shorts. Don't be going to a feature filmmaker and asking for help. It doesn't work. You do need some help in terms of understanding. When you finish your film, it's no longer yours. It's the audience's. And the audience may not see the film you think you made. They may see something completely different. This is what I do in my works in progress at Seattle every year, is I literally put audience, industry, mentors, and filmmaker together during the rough cut stage, because filmmakers and industry, by the way, have no idea really how audience see the same content. So trying to get some mix of that somewhere so you can get a little clarity about what your film's about would be helpful. But also this question about shooting yourself in the foot, this is the risk part of the business side of what you're doing. You are going to take a big risk, and it's better if you have people around you that can help you understand that risk. But yeah, you're going to have to take a risk at some point. And it helps if you can arm yourself with enough information about the festival, the programmers, and your film. But sometimes you got to take a leap of faith. That's not a great answer, I know. Sorry.
There's a bunch of questions, so I'm gonna sort of start going through them. Someone's asking, I was told by other filmmakers that film festivals don't tend to accept films that are publicly available online. Is it true? Is it starting to change with COVID? And I think this is tying into something that I wanted to talk about more broadly anyway, I think there has been a sort of change in the life cycle of a film compared to maybe, like say 5 years, a decade ago, and people are putting stuff online quicker. But what is your view on that? Because, you can talk about your festival strategy, you can talk about, do you want the widest audience possible? So how do you see that?
It is the constant question, right? So I agree. Things have changed, things are changing, things continue to change. COVID has changed things. It depends on your goals. If you want audience, if you want eyeballs, you go online. We understand that. But you don't just go online. You go online strategically and specifically. So the One World Festival, which I have many, many thoughts on, but that conglomeration of festivals that came together in the summer to put on a online festival, those short filmmakers who participated in that saw audience numbers occasionally up into the millions. That is something you would never get through the festival experience. But you have to understand what you're trading off. You're trading off that audience engagement, or you're trading off starting a certain kind of relationship with these programmers for future films. But if your goal is audience, online is where you want to go. If your goal is monetizing your audience, online is where you want to go in terms of doing it yourself. That's not what sales agents will say. They have a different way of monetizing, and it's also valuable. But if you want to do it yourself through your website or whatever, I get that. The question about the COVID impact is that we still have this problem with premieres. So most recently, it was the Locarno TIFF problem. Locarno decided not to geo-block anything and made filmmakers sign off on the contract when they submitted that they understood, if chosen, they were not going to be geo-blocked, and that was not going to change. You will notice, as a side note, that Locarno was not included in that group of film festivals that did the One World Film Festival. Just a side note. Toronto, which was included in that group of festivals, said, okay, Locarno, if you're not going to geo-block anyone, even though you had restricted audience and restricted dates, like they only screened 3 times, and I think that they had a ceiling of 500 for their audience. Toronto said, we get that and we understand that and we appreciate that, but you've now taken every premiere possible. You've taken world, international, country, city, continent, anything. So we're considering all short films that have played at Locarno to have no premiere status, which means they go to the bottom of our consideration list. If we have room, as we program the world premieres and the North American premieres that we prioritize, then we'll take a look at those Locarno films. Now, they did program some Locarno films, so 1 or 2 got in. But this is a premiere issue that continues, and it has to do with the geo-blocking during COVID specifically. Until that premiere issue goes away completely, we still have to pay attention to it. So that goes back to your goals. Is what you're trying to do is to maximize a business opportunity or a business strategy development along with your creative, where you need to be at one of those big festivals, then we have to pay attention to premiere status. It means I need to have a talk with you about waiting to go online, or how you're going to go online, or when you're going to go online. By the way, sales agents don't want anybody to go online. So that's a whole different issue. That's another panel altogether.
Yeah, and I've noticed that I think there's some differing opinions as well about the geo-blocking issue, whether you speak to distributors or to filmmakers that work without agencies or distributors. And
absolutely. And it's all from perspective, right? Everybody has their own agenda. But filmmakers have to recognize when somebody's giving them advice what their agenda is. You have to recognize my agenda, my bias. I want you all to be completely empowered and to take down the system. So just so you know, that's me.
Okay. Right, next one. So someone says lots of the bigger festivals with good industry exposure, referencing Locarno and Rotterdam, seem to accept primarily shorts with backing or funding. If my short's self-funded with no logos at the end, no famous actors, is it worth sending it to them? And I think this goes probably beyond those really big name festivals. Yeah, and I guess because they're saying like, should I stick with back at a pub local events, which is maybe like a bit too far on the other end.
We just went from one extreme to the other.
But this is the thing. I think also this idea that people that filmmakers maybe have an idea of this, of like high production value is almost a must, which is in a lot of time, particularly with shorts, not the case.
No, it's not the case at all. So there's a perception that is how it works, but then there's also a truth, and the reality is that's not how it works. So especially in Europe, you have a system that's actually a pipeline that filmmakers go through, whether it's regards to funding or to development or even into production. You have national film boards that are always choosing certain films to support. You have the film worldwide, the film industry is actually very small. A large majority of it, we all know each other, we all see each other. And so there's a lot of talking about certain things that we like, or certain filmmakers and stories that we like. And those are the ones that seem to move forward the easiest, that have the most logos, because they've sort of been through that pipeline. But in reality, the truth is, and I think I can say this safely for a majority of festivals, when we programmers are looking at a film to consider for the festival, we don't look at its pedigree first. We literally, for the most part, I try not to even look at the synopsis. I hit play and I watch the film. So I don't know if it has logos until I get to the end. And I don't know of any relationship that it may have to anything else until I read the notes, which I rarely, if ever, do. So the key thing here is that those films that go through that pipeline system, they have a lot of support and a lot of input and a lot of people who actively engage on their behalf because they know them. So I think the bigger question is, if I am a filmmaker and my film and I know nobody, then do I have a chance, and should I still be applying? And my answer is, if you're here, you actually know somebody, you know, the two of us. But my answer is yes, absolutely. If you can go through the process and identify those key elements we talked about, what's your film really about? What is it you're really speaking to? Did you get everything from your gut, heart, head out? And did you put it together in a way that when people are evaluating it, they can see the elements clearly and cohesively? And then the biggest thing of all, did you take a risk? Did you give me something I hadn't seen before because it was uniquely you?
Yes. Someone's also asking, when you apply to a festival, can you be sure that your film is actually watched? Which, again, is very dependent on which festival. But I think, like, following on to that as well, because you've been speaking about, you know, marketing language and translating that language, you know, through synopsis, through filmmaker statements. But as you're saying, very often when you get film submitted, that, you know, I know when we get film submitted, I press play. Like, I don't necessarily even. I sometimes don't look at the director's name before I watch it, you know. So I think it's like, how do you stand out even before you're able to communicate anything?
No, it's a really good point. So first of all, if you're at a festival that's been around longer than a minute, and if you are at a festival that's real at any level, you get watched. You know, I have been at festivals for 30 years, and I've been at all those festivals I got listed at the top of the talk. And I know that you got watched. I know that you got watched because I'm talking about you with my programmers or my pre-screeners. I know in some cases you got watched because I had to take up the slack and I watched you. During the height of my work at Palm Springs, I was watching between 2,000 and 3,000 films per year in shorts alone. So yeah, you get watched. So you can make any excuses you want, like, oh, I didn't get in, they must not have watched me. Yeah, tell yourself whatever you need to tell yourself, but it's not true. But if you go to festivals that are further down that pecking order that we talked about before, I guarantee that you get watched, maybe not. You know, maybe not. How do you stand out? Look at the first few minutes of your film. That's how you stand out. Is everything in place the way it's supposed to be at the highest possible level? And did you follow, did you track, did you do what you needed to do so that the person who's watching that film, whether it's Sanne or me, you know, sees what we need to see in the first minute to keep us going? Which means, by the way, as my friend Sharon Badal from Tribeca will always say, whatever you do, make sure you don't open a movie with an alarm clock going off and a hand hitting it, because that's not how you do that. Sorry.
That's a very good point. Someone's back to the crisis, I guess. Someone saying, you know, I'm finishing my first short in December or January. I was considering submitting in December for spring festivals like Tribeca and Santa Barbara. Do you think there's an advantage to waiting until the spring to submit to festivals that might actually go back to normal later in the year?
So a couple of things. Tribeca and Santa Barbara are two vastly different festivals. So you have two vastly different set of goals and expectations if those are your two priorities. So that's the first red flag I heard in that question. The second red flag is Tribeca's already moved to June. So you've got to pay attention to this shift. It's happening a lot right now. And you will see that if you get the headlines off of the trades in your inbox every day, which you're now going to sign up for free. So track where everybody's going. I believe, you know, the festivals that I work with and the people that I talk to, the April, May, June festivals are still planning some moderated version or slightly smaller version of their festival in a hybrid manner, and they're leaving the brick and mortar to the last second. So because we just don't know. So if, depending on what your goals are, if you just want to start the circuit and you want to start in spring and you're ready to start in spring, and so you're applying in December and January, then I would say track your festival choices really carefully before you submit. You're not going to get that submission feedback if they decide to cancel or to change over, most likely. Palm Springs, for example, Palm Springs is usually in June for the Short Fest. They're in January for the Feature Fest. They've now delayed the Feature Fest twice. And last I heard, they may not even have it, but they haven't announced that publicly. So these decisions, until they're confirmed publicly, these decisions are really ongoing. So if you really need a a through line of festival experience, you've got about 12 to 18 months at the most on the festival circuit, then I would say pay close attention to what's happening with COVID over the next few months and reevaluate again come January. You don't want to wait a whole year, but do you want to wait a few months? Maybe. It's going to be determined by what's going on with COVID, with the vaccine, with politics. You got a lot to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and following up on that, there's a question from Harvey, who's had quite a good run with his most recent films. But he says, obviously, rejections far outweigh this. One thing I've been struggling with is getting engagement during the COVID time. We haven't been able to show it to an audience, and networking is a problem. What advice do you have for promoting the film and getting more people interested during this time? And I think this ties into something you were saying earlier about what filmmaker return is at festivals at the moment as well, and like how, you know, like how do you best go about networking when you don't have the money to just attend everywhere you want, or even at this point possibility? Like, right,
exactly, right. So it does go back to a social media strategy, really, to be honest, because it's kind of the one thing we all have right now. I'm sorry to hear about this, the problem accessing programmers and the people at the festivals with Harvey, because what's happening is so many people have been laid off, and for a lot of festivals, they haven't come back yet. And so you have a smaller number of programmers trying to do a greater amount of work in a scenario where they're not sure of what the work is they're actually doing. So the one thing that I would say is during COVID is I think most people's actions stem from a position of kindness. They're trying to do the right thing. Rejection never has anything to do with you. I learned that years ago, and it's true. It really never has anything to do with you. But I guess an understanding of maybe what they're going through might help. But this idea of how do you connect with audience, for me, it goes back to social media. And as much as we may hate Facebook, or we may eschew social media as being something that we're not part of because we all saw the social dilemma, you know, it is a useful tool, and you control the tool. If you pay attention, you control the tool. So I say to everybody, I think you have to have a social media presence. I think you have to reach out to people you might not know, but you have friends in common and you want to try to broaden your network. I think you talk about things as much as possible. I will say I have a, hear me out before you all jump on the internet, by the way. I have a secret private Facebook group for emerging filmmakers only. It's called Emerging Filmmakers Only. The word emerging is in parentheses. I tried to make it as simple as possible for everybody. If you are a writer, director, producer, cinematographer, you're welcome in. We may expand that soon, but that's what we're looking at right now. And you have to have at least started the process to festival. So you have to like be on your first film, on your way, been at festivals already. Right now it's a group of, I think, just under 600 filmmakers from around the world. It is a place where you can start to maybe increase your networking a little bit, maybe. To join, you will be asked to answer 3 questions and to agree to the group rules. And I can't tell you how many filmmakers forget that. Don't forget that, because I will reject you. But as soon as you do that, I will invite you in. So maybe that's one way to start to increase your networking a little bit during COVID. It's why I developed it. It's why I put it together, at least. Yeah.
I mean, and there's plenty of questions still that we're not going to be able to get through all of them. So, you know, those people might be good in joining groups like this. Someone's asking, how many festivals do you apply to and are not accepted by before you decide to stop applying, because it can be expensive? And I think this is, I mean, it's a very, very broad question, but I think this maybe also comes to like, how do you start budgeting from, you know, your very early stages for that strategy, and what choices do you make? You know, obviously like festivals in the US tend to ask a lot higher submission fees than they do in Europe.
We do.
So yeah, what is sort of
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, just like what's your advice basically?
The reason that the US festivals charge more submissions, we don't have any film funding. We don't have any film organizations or national film boards. So that's why we have that lovely reputation, by the way. And I see a whole bunch of filmmakers asking to join the Emerging Filmmakers group. If you didn't answer the questions, I'm gonna decline you. So just, you're awfully fast, I'm just saying. You know, I go back to that 3-month thing. I'm trying to do this in chunks for my filmmakers so that you can get a feel for the response to see if the language you're using and the way you speak about your film actually works to your advantage and is getting the response that you want. I don't want you to submit to 100 festivals. I want you to get into festivals so that other festivals will ask you to send your film for consideration, because when you're invited to submit, there is no submission fee. That's the rule of thumb across the board at major festivals. So I agree 100%. You have to figure out a way where you can manage the first round of festival submissions. What should you plan for that in your budget? Well, let's deconstruct it and take a look at the numbers. Let's say that in your first round you have 10. That's a lot for your first round, but let's say you have 10. And you have excellent reasons for each one. You've identified what your human condition is. You know what your language is and how you're presenting, and you've done your homework between your film and what the programming at that festival is like. And you're going to go to 10, and you're going to assume, let's say, 30 to 50 euros for each one. Do the math, add it up, and put that in your budget. Your film is not done budget-wise until you have moved on to your next film, really. Just because you finished production or you finished editing does not mean you're finished. And every producer out there who wants to take out the line item for publicity, PR, stills, or festival attendance because they didn't budget wisely enough in the first place for the things that they need, don't do it. Because you will have a very difficult time getting that money later, and you can't do certain things later and have them be as good that you can do, for example, during production. And we need those things, and one of the big things is stills. So this all comes back to pre-production and working out, understanding that you're not doing a budget just for the production, you're doing a budget for the life of the film that you are responsible for, which is all the way through distribution, whatever that may look like, all the way through the festivals, whatever that may look like, all the way through exhibition, whatever that may look like. That's your responsibility as a filmmaker, producer, director.
Yeah, someone's asking, what if your film is for a niche audience, what strategy to adopt? Obviously, I think this is maybe also what can tie into this is sort of the difference between strategies for more like straight fiction work versus, experimental animation, artist moving image work.
So exactly. So let's break this down actually into two parts. Niche programming, as what you just said, that experimental, that art, that breaking the boundaries, and niche as subject matter, let's say LGBTQ or Jewish, for example. First of all, if you've spoken to the human condition in some way, I'm going to say you have a global audience. So I'm always going to go back to that. Experimental, for example, is a style that is particularly championed by certain film festivals and certain audiences. You don't want to miss them. So of course, you're going to take a look at that. The niche marketing, here's the thing. If you've told a really, really good story well, and you've spoken to the human condition above your niche, that film is going to go everywhere. You know it's always going to go to the niche part. So you can look at that niche part in a secondary manner. When you've actually sold on the feature circuit, when you've actually sold your film and you're starting to get screening fees from festivals, the LGBTQ and the Jewish film festivals around the world, for example, are very good because they pay screening fees because you know that you can find a home there, because you've got a good ready-made audience. So you don't want to lose them, but I think that you can, if you've done all your work correctly and well, I think that you can look at other festivals as well. And in a way, it also speaks to this question we had before we got talking about, should you look only at short film festivals? And I think that's a mistake. I think that you should look at short film festivals, absolutely, as well as, let's call them more mainstream, who program shorts. There's really no barrier any longer to being in both. Both kinds are on the Academy qualifying list, for example. Mm-hmm. You can get different things from these different festivals. So in the short film festival world, you're going to get a lot of camaraderie. You're going to get a lot of help accessing industry and audience. You're going to have family. In the feature festivals that also play shorts, you're going to do the same thing, but you're going to be at a slightly different level. If you're looking at me right now, you see where my hand's going. At a slightly different level, because you have features above you, but you still have the opportunity for access to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Is this all helpful? Like, am I getting to the answers that are working? Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it's all very useful. I think that in particular is really useful. That you know that those different types of festivals both have a very different function they can fulfill for you in terms of your development and your reach. There's a question saying, at what stage in the process should you invite someone or a few people to have a watch of your short? Which I guess is also, to me, is also sort of tying into, do you approach people, programmers, in advance to get attention, to get eyes on stuff before it's ready to sort of like flag up? You know, I know that everyone has quite different views and opinions on that. So
I like to believe I'm right, so I'm going to go with my opinion, my view. I think you should approach programmers all the time, not necessarily just with a film. I think when you hear programmers on panels, when you see them at festivals, when you run into them somewhere and you introduce yourself, which is very hard, I know, but you introduce yourself and you say, I'm a filmmaker, I hope one day you'll get to see my films. I think the more you start relationships with programmers, the better you are, which is why when sales agents take a film off to festivals and filmmakers are going the opposite direction, I feel you lose something because you've lost that potential for a relationship with that festival. So I think you should have honest, real relationships with programmers all the time, and that you should stay current with those relationships as you go through your next films. I'm still working with filmmakers I met 20 years ago. Okay, maybe 15 years ago. I was gonna say, how old are we all? The other part of that question maybe though might be also, how soon in the process do you let people see your film for consideration with regards to how well it's working in landing its story? That's a slightly different issue. First of all, if you want to do a test screening like that, never do it with people that you know. The next thing is, if you want to do that, do it at a place where you, one, can still be open to hearing what is being said. Two, you have time to make any changes you might want to make. And three, you're not in the room at the time. So somebody's either recording the conversation for you, or you're somewhere behind a closed door and nobody can see you. Because there's not gonna be any value to it if people are watching your face go through micro contortions as they're talking. And I think there's a danger in doing it too many times. I'd say if you're gonna do that, do it once, because you really can color your own intent. So can I ask you, what do you like in terms of filmmakers getting to know you and wanting to have a relationship with you?
Oh, that's a big question, isn't it? I mean, I think it's obviously very different depending on the Scottish circuit and internationally. You know, it's easy to build relationships here, and my main thing is I tend to always sort of have a look if someone sends me an email just flagging up their film. Like I'll have a look at it even if it's been submitted to the official route. My with biggest pet peeve, as I'm sure with most, is that kind of very unpersonalized emailing, which is, I think it does you no favors. But it is nice. It is nice having that, and ultimately meeting those people on the circuit in person. You know, it does create a sort of basis for a relationship.
Yeah. And I think, just a heads up, a warning. I know we're getting close to the end, but maybe we have a minute. Just a little heads up and a warning that if you're sending out those notes to say, you don't know me, but I've watched your work and I really admire what you do, and I'm always happy to go to the festival, and someday I hope that I get to have a film in there as well. That's lovely. If you're sending out a form letter, 9 times out of 10, you forget to change the name of the festival that you're addressing. And it's talking all about how great you are, you meaning the filmmaker, and about what you've done and all the names you can drop and all the people you can talk about. We don't care. I think I can safely say we don't care. Yeah. None of us care about that. And it's unlikely that it's going to yield you much. And I would recommend, again, sort of 3 follow-up emails across the month to let me know about new selections. You know, did you get my email? Did you get my guys? We got it. Just let it go. Move on. Yeah. You have. Yeah, we do have to wrap up because I'm sure I'll be nudged soon. But I think I guess what I want to say is that this is recorded. There's some people who asked for a repetition on something, so like it will be recorded and online at some point for if you want to rewatch it.
I would also maybe recommend keeping track of other festivals' online industry panels at the moment, because I think there's never been this much access to these conversations as there has been recently.
Really
so
true.
but yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything else, Kathleen, in terms of like even resources or things that people should look out for.
I think that a couple of things. Thank you for giving me that opportunity. First of all, thank you, you guys, for everybody who came and is listening and engaging, and to everybody who said, yeah, call Kathleen, that's a good idea. I'm very grateful. I'm looking at some of the questions on the Q&A, some of the very interesting questions on the Q&A that didn't get answered. If anybody wants to make a copy of, I guess that's actually Emily or somebody at the festival, wants to make a copy of those Q&As, I'll try to address it. I'm going to give a talk on Saturday to the Emerging Filmmakers Only group. I'll try to address some of those questions in there if they feel like they want to become part of that. I would just say that, first of all, you've got an amazing short film festival in your own town. Sonny does a great job. Festival has got a great reputation. She's amazing. Just having this conversation with her, I want to do a whole panel with you. So she's amazing. Make use of everything that you can that's closest to you. Don't discount it because it's hometown. And then try to get out of yourself a little bit. I know it's hard, but try to get out of your own way and try to get out of yourself and look at the festival world from a slightly different perspective, somewhere else along that cinematic trinity line, and see if you can start to see things through a different perspective. It might give you some new ideas about who you are and what you're doing and where you want to go.
Amazing.
I guess.
Yes. Well, this has been brilliant. Please stay online for like a little bit longer so we can probably say goodbye. But thank you everyone for coming. And we're going to go offline now. Thank you for all your questions and hopefully speak to you soon.
Bye, guys.